Hey, welcome back, everybody. So hopefully we'll get started a little smoother than we did last week here with the video quality. Just shout out to whoever's on the stream. Showing we got 4, 5, 6 on us here right now. If you would just drop a comment, just let us know how the audio and the video looks. Make sure everything's not super fuzzy or super distorted there, and we can get started here. Awesome.
So before we get started, I have to give a shout out to Dana if she's on here. I made a huge mistake. I called you Donna last week, and that has been bothering me all week. So Dana, shout out to you. I am so sorry about getting your name wrong last week, but I will get that corrected.
You realize she's going to jump on as soon as you said that, after you said that. Get the camera right here. So we you guys like that a little bit better, or is that? Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Just wanted, so those of you that, we got some dogs in the background here. Those of you that joined us last week and then even on this week here, probably saw the title. So we've got Hobie Kayak to Mexico and how trolling motors have changed kayak fishing. So we'll talk about the elephant in the room here. So Hobie Kayak to Mexico, and you have read that right. So their total operations is not technically in Mexico, but they have moved their manufacturing from Oceanside to Mexico. And I told you guys that I was going to talk about this as soon as this was verified. And now I've received pictures of the, of course, everybody's got to drive by the front window there. So we talked about this a little bit, and I've received video photos of their Mexico facility. It looks fantastic. It's super clean, but it is in Mexico. So if that's an issue, it is what it is. Now, technically, it's about an hour and a half south of their Oceanside, California plant, their original plant. So it's not super far away. And just my personal opinion on it, California is just not the easiest place to do business with. And I'm really surprised that they've kind of lasted as long as they have there. Hopefully this will kind of iron some things out, but you know, it is what it is, guys. Said I've been pretty vocal on Hobie's needed to make some changes. It's pretty widely known that, you know, Hobie's owned by a group of investors. They've actually been owned by investor groups since about 87. So that's nothing new, but the groups have changed over time. But it's going to be something to keep an eye on, to be honest with you. I saw my first 360 XR today, and I was really impressed with it. It does seem to be a bit more sturdy. The stainless steel plates in there, the compression tube adjustment. I'll get some video out that as soon as possible. Thanks a lot, Eddie. I appreciate that for the $5 there. Appreciate you. But yeah, I've seen it. Our rep sent us pictures of it. But again, something to keep an eye on. If we start seeing MX serial numbers, that remains to be seen. But again, I think they're heading in the right direction, but I don't think they're quite there. And that's just my personal opinion. Things need to be changed, things need to be upgraded, but they have done some changes with the 360 drive. The one thing that I will say to people that talk about Hobies is Hobie is still a hot seller. Hobie to me is a lot like the Harley Davidson of kayaks. People either love them or they hate them. And then people that don't really know one way or the other or just don't have any experience about them, they just don't know which way to go on. Hobie makes a lot of products. So it's not just a $5,000 pro angler. They make pedal drive kayaks all the way down to the Passport rotomold. And they rotomolded the Passport starting last year. I thought that was a phenomenal thing. The Lynx, we own a Lynx personally. We love it. I ran a pro angler last year. Didn't have any issues, but I did not run the 360 drive. So it's maybe something that you need to, look at moving forward. But honestly, if you have a previous year's model and you have a warranty issue, you're probably going to get replacement parts or a replacement hull of the 360 XR. So just know that as well.
My big question on all of this, and I actually saw this in the comments last week, is if it's moving to Mexico, are we going to see price changes?
Personal opinion, I don't think we'll see price increases. So the increase this year was about $100, $150, but they made some changes. They no longer upcharge for camo, which that was kind of a thing with me. It was a percentage on camo. When you're talking about a $5,500 pro angler, I think it added like $250 or something like that. There's no longer an upcharge for camo, and the pro anglers are $100 more this year than they were last year. So you can kind of make the argument that it actually did go down, but it's only camo colors. So you've got is it fireside camo in the 360 drives? You have fireside camo, the blue camo, the Amazon camo. And in the 180s, they brought back that sunset camo, which is what I had last year. I love the sunset camo, that orange and black. They don't do dune anymore. And dune, they've added to dune camo, which they've added some black. It just looks a little more premium instead of just a flat gray. Dana, you missed. I knew it. I knew that was going to happen. Christina made a public apology to you here in the intro to the video for I'll let you repeat that.
I will. So Dana, I wanted to say I'm very sorry for getting your name wrong last week. I apologize for that. It has been bothering me for the entire week. So I just wanted to apologize for that. I will try to work on that. Give us 1 second. Let's try to figure out what's going on with our internet connection, and we will get right back to you guys.
Oh, is it getting?
Yes. Allie, let us know.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, we've got it tied in there.
We need to go into settings.
Okay. Bear with us here just a second there, guys. I apologize.
Just go to the Wi-Fi. Yeah, go to that one.
Okay. It's on that.
No, it's not.
Okay, there we go.
And refresh.
Here.
All right. Do we still have all of you?
Let me know down in the comments there. How we looking? How we sounding?
Our Ethernet cord apparently decided not to work today. All right. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, William. We appreciate it. All right. So the other thing that we were going to start talking about, and big shout out real quick, Uncle David Outdoors is with us.
Hey.
He was the one that we talked about last week. He's been dropping some videos here recently on floating on the Buffalo River. So if you haven't checked him out, check him out. So the other thing we wanted to talk about was we wanted to talk about the trolling motor situation.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to let him kind of start talking about some of that. I'm going to go into a little bit of a different point of view with it, more on the logistics, if that makes any sense, at least in Arkansas.
I mean, so with trolling motors, and again, we're talking about kayak fishing, obviously, and there's a big debate on trolling motors on kayaks. So honestly, to me, a trolling motor on a kayak, it's going to get you to your spots faster. Spot lock is great. I ran it for about a year. I liked it, But quite frankly, I'm a little bit more of a purist personally, but that's personal preference. I like to paddle. I like to be on rivers and creeks, really. But we went back to pedal drive because I felt like, going to the pro angler with the pedal drive, I felt like I still had the speed. I could maintain my position, whether it be a Hobie drive or a prop drive. And honestly, I like a little bit more. I like to feel a little bit more that I was doing something with the kayak, because what I was doing is I ran a New Canoe Unlimited with a trolling motor on it. And I'm sitting there with a little keyless fob. It looks like a little keyless entry for your vehicle. And I'm pushing the throttle up and down and left and right. I'm towing her and her kayak. And it took a lot of the reason why I love kayaking. It took it kind of out. Now, I'm not a competitive fisherman. I do some local tournaments, but we sponsor a lot of these local groups. So I feel kind of weird going into those groups and feeling like I'm taking anything from them. But we have some local groups here that are friendly. They're not super competitive. We're all friends here. And, I like to be out there. Again, the motorized kayaks, though, it's a way it's going. So whether you like motors or hate them, whether you like live scope or hate it, it's coming. So, and more of your kayaks are coming out that have that capability. So a lot of them are going to have motor mounts in the front, motor mounts on the back, or be motor ready. Oldtown a few years ago even has a kayak called the Autopilot. It just comes from the factory with one in the middle of it. You just got to put a battery in it and go. So I think that's going to be the value proposition. And again, guys, I'm talking about just fishing kayaks. Obviously, this doesn't really affect recreational kayaks, but it's coming. Even some of your river fishing kayaks are they're gonna have motor ready. The RVR 119 from Bonafide. There's a plate you can put on the back of it. It's even got the little slot for the Torpedo power pack to go in there, and it's you're set to go. So there's a lot of debate on it. There's some tournaments that do paddle or pedal only, and then there's some tournaments that just anybody and anything could get in there. Bassmasters has gotten into the kayak tournament scene as well. So now that you've got KBF, now that you've got Bassmasters in there, you're going to see a lot more of this because you're going to see a lot more people. It's going to have a lot more exposure. More exposure is just going to be a good thing for the entire industry.
So one of the things that Dr. Kayak said here is that, those of you with limitations, I want to actually point a different point of view.
Yeah.
We did really miss the paddling portion of it, but I'm not going to lie. When it came to us going across Norfolk Lake, I'm sitting there going, I would not want to paddle this, especially because we're going over, there's an area that we're in that is very boat heavy. And so you have to get across there pretty quickly. And so for us, it was kind of a nice thing to have. And then we did the Hobies. And so the Hobies are allowing us to get across quicker. But I also 100% see why you would want that trolling motor.
Oh, yeah.
So it really depends on where you're at, what you're doing. If you're on rivers and creeks, I don't see necessarily a need for it. But if you're on the lake, 100%, especially with us, because we will end up going all over the place. And it just made it a little bit easier if we were compared to just paddling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, Dragon Tails Fishing was saying, same with the Florida Redfish series. Absolutely. And a lot of people that, especially when you're fishing for those, those redfish out there is, especially down in the Bay around the Texas area, you got those saltwater flats. That's where your micro power pole comes in. That's, so your electronics, your battery storage, all of that stuff. Most of your mid to higher end kayaks are going to have compartments built into it. They're going to have easy wiring because not everybody has a paddle shop, unfortunately, that, they can just go to and have us rig it up. A lot of people want to do it themselves, but people get a little nervous about drilling holes into their kayak. And that's where a lot of your access plates come into play. If you've seen my Tight Necks video, I talk about that pretty much all throughout, was the access plates and the ease of customizing your kayak.
So BMAX, something that you're mentioning here, we have the same problem even in non-motorized, because we have so much gear that we really try to kind of rig out. And yes, it becomes a problem. So for that reason, we're blessed to have a lot of lakes, a lot of access points. And so we actually almost make it a point to go to places where we know that if the boat ramp is busy, we can kind of move over to a different location. One thing I do want to talk about real quick, because we've seen problems with this, especially in Arkansas, is because once you motorize a kayak in Arkansas, you have to register it. And one of the things that we constantly see is we give the MSO.
Yeah.
And the MSO is basically just a manufacturing statement of origin, right? Is that what it stands for? Mm-hmm. And it's just a piece of paper that has your haul ID number on it. It's got the signature of, I always think of the New Canoe ones because that's what we ended up registering at one point. And one of the things that we had.
I don't know why it's doing that.
I'm going to continue talking while he figures this out.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that we noticed a lot of the time was that people would go to the DMV, and we had the same problem, is people will go to the DMV and they're looking for then that MSO. And so we started having this problem with, they wanted XYZ. We went and got XYZ. We ended up with a different person at the same DMV that said we didn't need any of that. And so we're just trying to figure out, like, okay, what do we need to do? How do we need to do it? And then we've had people call us all the time saying they're not accepting this. And so that's one of the things that can get a little frustrating, although that MSO is exactly what you need. And so I think that's been the most frustrating thing for people, is just realizing that, yes, you're going to have to register it. It's not a whole lot of money, especially in Arkansas.
It does differ from state to state.
It does. Yeah. And it was just, once you realize we've given you everything that you need, it's usually just a little bit of a conversation with the DMV itself. I know Andy has gone on the limb for customers before, saying, hey, this is what they actually need. This is showing you everything that you need. And so that's one of the things that we constantly have to kind of keep an eye on when somebody is registering that kayak. And like I said, it's a small thing. It's a little inconvenient. It's a little frustrating, but I think the DMV in general usually is.
It's frustrating. Even for us at the shop, you sell somebody, someone comes in and throws down a couple $1,000s or more just for the kayak, and then they're throwing down a couple $1,000 for the battery setup. And then they go to the DMV and they got the paperwork they need, and to the DMV, and this is my plea with everybody, if you're going through this or looking to go, don't get mad at the person working there, because it really is, it's not something they're used to doing. So I understand some of that. But when you're talking about, when you tell them, I'm here to register the kayak, I say, well, you don't have to register the kayak. When you got to tell them, well, we're putting a motor on it. Well, some states do, some states don't. They'll say you don't have to register a trolling motor. Well, you're not. You're registering the kayak because it has a motor on it, and you're changing that classification. So you got to get it assessed, which a lot of times your assessment's going to be zero because of the value will be under a certain threshold.
And when he's talking about assessment, this is something that I know Missouri and Arkansas do. Not all states do this.
Yeah. If it's newer in a certain year, you actually have to get a title for it. And that's where a lot of people get kind of held up on that, was, sometimes they'll say, well, they can't get a title on it if it doesn't have, Eddie, I'm not sure on how much it is in Florida. In Arkansas, it's $7.50 every 3 years for your sticker. And then it's a one-time titling fee of the $10. But after that, it's $7.50 each year. Of course, you got to put the 3-inch lettering on the, on both sides of the bow where they can read it in the reflective. There's companies out there that do the stickers that look a little better than those big blocky things you get at like Lowe's or Home Depot. I know in like Oklahoma, you have to register almost all vessels, and it's like $50 or $60 a year. So it does differ from state to state.
So, and that's the thing, Stephen actually just mentioned Illinois even goes through a different process. The big thing is actually contacting and doing a little bit of research in your state, because we don't know all the different states and what they require.
And usually if you have a paddle shop too, usually that paddle shop is going to know your state regulations.
Yep. And so Dana, you just asked if you use any trolling motor, you have to register it. Yeah. And that's Arkansas.
Yeah.
And that's just because you go from being non-motorized to motorized. And so that's the difference there.
What's up, Raj? Man, Roger is the one with that Pescador Pro with the
Oh,
homemade.
yes. Yes.
I've got to put a clip of that up on the channel. That is one of the coolest things.
Yeah, we actually just watched that video today.
Yes. And we have that quite a bit at the shop that I work at. A lot of times someone will want to trade in like a homemade trailer. And if there's not a title with it, we can't really do, as a shop, as a business, we can't really do anything with that. But people sell them all the time. I got a lot of homemade kits, and it's a process. You can do it, of course, but like you said, it's just, you have a lot of loops that you got to jump through, and the whole thing is just more trouble than it needs to be. It all comes down to the state is getting their fees and their registrations, but just the paperwork between boat and kayak is they really need to. I'd like to see them streamline that process a lot better, because when I put one on a new canoe trolling motor, I had a motor guide on the front of it, and I had an MSO, I had the receipt, I had everything, but I didn't have a picture of the hull ID on the boat. So we had to come back to the house, take a picture of it, went back in the DMV, talked to a different person, and they didn't even ask for the picture. So
yeah, and that I know, that specific process I know is actually for boats. I had to go through that with my parents when I was helping them with that. So I think it just depends on who you end up getting with, because kayaks kind of fall into kind of almost like a weird category. And so I think sometimes just asking them, and I know for us, if we had just asked somebody else and just say, hey, can you ask someone else about this as well at the DMV, we probably would have saved ourselves some time as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm hoping the video kind of keeps going here. Again, appreciate you sticking with us there. Hopefully we will, I'm going to work on getting this kind of straightened out this week. We've been kind of dealing with some internet issues, kind of spotty here lately, but one thing, when I register my kayak back and forth at DM, and I've done this before, where a customer will get upset and then they'll call me and I say, well, just let me call them. Now, I wouldn't expect your paddle shop to do this, but again, I sympathize with people doing this, because you're ready to get on the water. You're wanting to go catch some monsters, and you're having to deal with local government. So I usually, when I call them, I'll tell them what's going on, and they say, well, we got to have a signed thing. And an MSO is not a title. It's just paperwork that comes with the kayak, and it just shows it's the hull ID number, the serial number on the kayak, a piece of paper that come from the manufacturer. Different companies do it differently, because a lot of times some companies will ship them out with every kayak. What happens is a lot of those will fall off during shipping. A lot of those will get mixed up, and just it's a mess. Jackson Kayak has just started doing that, where they've got like it almost looks like a little packing list like FedEx and UPS does on the bottom of the kayak. It's got like that little clear envelope you tear open, and it's got it in there. But used to, you just call the manufacturer like Jackson or email them. They'll get back to you within the day, or usually within a few hours, and then you got it. Bonafide does something a little differently. You do have it with the kayak, but they give us a template. So I have a template on my computer where I just fill in all the information, I print it out. Well, the DMV doesn't really like that a lot, because it looks like you just made something up on a computer. But we just have to tell them, that's what they give us. That's what the manufacturer gives us. So a lot of times I'll throw a signature on it just to make it look official. But I mean, it's just something, you give them their title, give them their sticker, let them get on the water. They're paying the money,
And I mean, that goes without saying, even if you buy a kayak and don't plan on registering it right away, and even if you didn't even plan on registering it, keeping that MSO, keeping your receipt, all of that, that's always important. I know for us, I'm a hoarder to a certain extent. When it comes to paperwork, I still have the original paperwork from the kayaks that we first bought that we haven't had in
a couple of years. Yeah.
He hasn't had his in a couple of years, and I got rid of mine last year, but I still have all that paperwork. And it's just because you never know. And so do I need to get rid of that? Yes. But if you have your current kayak, keep all that stuff. And again, Raj, you're sitting here saying they emailed you the MSO the same day. That's usually the backup plan, is contact your local paddle shop, and they can usually help you out with that.
And he actually went to Jackson direct. And I'll say this, you know, I give Jackson, I've been given Jackson a lot of flack here the last few months, but they are some of the best people to work alongside and work with on warranties, on any of that stuff. You know, if there is a problem, I have full confidence in Jackson Kayak that they're going to take care of it. I know who to contact, and they get it done. But you know, my biggest thing with Jackson Kayak was, you know, that we need some innovation from them. We don't need to bring back, we don't need to recycle some old kayaks, and we need some stuff at a lower price point, in my opinion. But hopefully that'll come. You know, nothing specific I know about, but there are some discussions that hopefully we could be seeing something new from them, but nothing yet. Yeah, and warranty, and this is a big thing. So keep track of that paperwork, because that has your whole ID number. Not all kayak manufacturers stamp the whole ID number on the back of the kayak. Some of them are etched, and a couple of trips down the river and a couple of, you know, just light use, that can get scratched off to where you can't get an etching, you can't read it, and some of it looks like a 4-year-old scratched it in there too.
That's perception, isn't it?
They're one of them, but a lot of companies actually do that.
I know Perception is one of those, because I know
Perception, Wilderness Systems.
I had a Pescador 10 there for a while, and by the time I was done using it, we didn't use it all that much. That was kind of hard to read.
And a lot of times what we'll do is Perception does mail their paperwork with their kayaks, and we will actually you know, put it in the system, and it'll be on your receipt, so it's typed out. So again, if you lose that original paperwork, you've got the whole ID number. You can contact, you know, Perception or Wilderness System. You know, Confluence is what they're under. You know, there's a lot of different companies under that, and they can send that to you. But the biggest thing is having that whole ID number, so they know what to send you.
So while we're talking about all this stuff, if you guys have any specific questions, just leave them down in the comments. We are looking at those pretty regularly now. Oh, yeah. And so just kind of leave comments, and we will, you know, any questions that you guys have, we're here to answer.
And another thing too, if you enjoy the live streams, if you enjoy the content, make sure you hit that like button. That helps us with the algorithm. That helps get it out. And you know, Mark Zuckerberg's on his computer just sending this stuff out to everybody he could possibly send to. So help a boy out there, man. Okay. I tell you what, that we sold one of those. We sold our last one at my location Friday,
yes.
That, and we're in February here, so that, to me, that's the hot boat right now. And like we told this guy, this thing has got every single thing you can possibly get on it. It is heavy, if that's an issue with anybody, but it's the biggest thing about it is that's what happens when you put every single thing that you could possibly think of on a kayak. It does add to weight. So when a lot of people will ask me, hey, why don't they do this? Or it'd be nice if they did this. Well, I'm sure they think about that stuff, but what happens is they're trying to keep the weight down as much as possible. Native, they came out swinging. It's like, okay, we're going to put every single thing. We're going to put all of the treats on this kayak, and I love it. That is.
When we say it's heavy, we know we were carrying one of those around today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but the funny thing to me is, for us, we got used to his Pro Angler. Yeah. So for us, like the Titan 10.5, when it's heavy, and that's really what it is. So to me, the Titan 12.5 and the Hobie, like, unless I had them right next to each other, they were both heavy. And it just is what it is.
And another thing too was when we actually got the first models out of the factory. We toured Big Adventures is what they called. You know, that's Native, Bonafide, Titan, you know, or Native and Bonafide, among others, but those are the two main players there. Liquid Logic as well. And we brought some back. We brought the SKF 117, which I'm looking forward to getting some more content out on the water with that on rivers. But the Titan X, we got that thing in. We got those in before they actually had a weight on the website. So the weight just said TBD, to be determined. Mm-hmm. And when the truck came, so it's a big 18-wheeler, and we're at the back of it, and the truck driver, bless his heart, he's up in the truck and he's handing them down. Uncle David Outdoors, he's with me on all those too. And he slid that thing down, and we didn't know what we were getting into. And I remember when I did my first video, we didn't know what the weight is, and we were thinking, oh, it's maybe 130, 172 pounds fully rigged. And that thing coming down, and they ship them out, and it's like it's like a t-shirt wrapped around it, so it's slick, and it was impossible. I think we got like one or two of each color on those 12 fives, and this is before the 10 fives even shipped out. Like, oh my God, why, looking at these behemoths standing up there. But I took it out on the water, and I'm sure some of you guys have seen that video. I absolutely loved it. Well, but that's the thing. So that why it needs to be heavy, it has a lot of stuff on it. For one thing, it's reinforced in 3 different places. So it's reinforced on the bow because the motor mounts are integrated in there. You still need a plate on it, but they've anchored that down. So if you've got a lot of thrust on there, you don't want your deck flexing back and forth. So it's on the bow and the stern. They've also reinforced the gunnels so that you can run the Boondocks landing gear, the sidekick system, which is basically the same thing that Native runs. And it does. It's the one thing about a kayak where if you're going to put everything on a kayak, that's what happens. It does add to the weight. Aluminum gear track, all the storage holes. You've got the battery compartment, everything in there. Even the 10.5, I believe, is like a fully rigged, like that seat, drive, everything on it. I want to say it's about 150 pounds.
I'm going to throw out there as well is there are lighter kayaks. One of the issues that we had with the NAR was that it wasn't reinforced. We had those thin spots, and that led to a lot of flexing. So that heaviness, I kind of understand where they're coming from with that, because to me, I would rather have a boat that's heavier, but I know is not going to be flexing and cracking than something that is flexing and cracking.
But Doc, I hear you. It does. I mean, it's heavy, and that's always a decision that you should make. Anybody, even if they got a trailer, even if they got a loading system, or even if there's always a buddy with them, it's still something. If it's too heavy and you got a friend coming with you, that friend's going to find a way not to go with you if they think, if it's too heavy there. So William here, and William, man, I'm sorry. I know we've been, you've been messaging me on this. So the Hobie Quest, for those of you that don't know, Hobie makes a couple of different paddle kayaks. So that's without the drive. The Hobie Quest to me reminds me a lot of the Native used to make a boat called the Stingray, and now it's Liquid Logic making it. I think it's incredible. I want to say, if I remember right, the 12.5 is about $11.99. So Hobie has been making surfboards since day one. They've been, they came out with the Lynx this a couple of years ago. They make an incredibly fast hull design, and that's one thing that Hobie does really, really well is hull design, maximizing your stability while maximizing your speed. Also, I think it's an incredible value. It's got a great seat on it. It reminds me a lot of the Wilderness seat. So it's not a frame seat necessarily, but the bottom, the seat bottom can raise up in the front and down. So it gives you a little bit of that thigh support. I think it's a phenomenal kayak, and I think you're going to really love that. If I was going with one, I would definitely go with the 12.5. I like the longer kayaks for paddling, even if I'm on rivers and creeks. Unless you're getting the 14 foot and above, you're talking about wide open water or offshore. But I think the Hobie Quest is phenomenal. It's not something we deal with a whole lot being inland here. A lot of people like the 10.5, even 12 maybe. But, here the rivers are mainly Wilderness System, Tarpon 105s, a couple of Tarpon 120s. The Pescador Pros are really, really popular around here because we have a lot of rivers and creeks as well as lake. But when you get on the lake, typically people are getting into pedal drives and your bigger, heavy kayaks there. No problem, William. No problem at all. And like I said, anything I can do to help you out in the future, if you got any questions on that, don't hesitate to reach out there.
Wow.
What, this?
Yep.
Oh, there we go.
Marion, you're asking about the Perception 11.5 and the Bonafide Skiff 117. I'll let him get into this. I'm just going to say that these two are completely different. The Perception Outlaw really is more like your traditional kayak, where the Skiff 117 is kind of a mix between your kayak and paddleboard. So I think these two are going to be slightly different in terms of what you're going to use them for and where you're going to use them. I'll let him kind of talk about that a little bit more.
I love the skiff. I love the skiff way more than I thought I was going to, because when I first saw it, now it's $12.49, I believe, and it looks like a paddle. It looks like a Lynx, the Hobie Lynx without the drive. It's a paddling, but it really handles really well. So it's skimming across the top of the water. It's got a low enough profile. If you're out there on a little bit of wind, it's, your body is going to be the sail, but you're not going to get it hit in the kayak. The reason I like it so much is the same reason I like the RVR 119, that drop down skeg, that drop down fin in the back. There's a lever on the right side that you can flip it up and down. And what it does is that gives you two different handling kayaks in one. If you've got it up, it allows you to spin it around really quickly. If you got it down, it helps that tracking, that straight line performance. And if you're on rivers and creeks, it allows you to paddle upstream. Granted, a slow current, but it allows you to paddle upstream and not let the current swing out from under you. So I'm a huge, huge fan of the paddle performance. It's got the same seat as the SS series that Bonafide makes, the SS 127 and the SS 107. Liquid Logic, which is a sister company of Bonafide, they make a paddleboard style craft exactly like it, called the Versa. Now the Versa is at $9.99, so it's a little cheaper if you're not looking for a fishing kayak, and it's got the same seat as the native Falcon and the native native FX12.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both great seats. The skiff, you get the high-low option. I only paddled it in the high option, and I loved it. My balance in the water is absolutely abysmal, and she likes to give me crap about this. Get it out of your system. But I was able to stand up and paddleboard on it. I had a GoPro malfunction, which that's a different video altogether there with my GoPro stuff. So I got the video of me on the water with the skiff, and then her standing up and paddleboarding in it. Again, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But I love the skiff. It's lightweight. It's easy to carry for one person. The Outlaw is a little different. The Outlaw is that true tri-hull design. So it looks like two pontoons coming down and a nice little keel down the middle. It's very stable, but it's very sluggish. So if you're wanting to paddle at a great distance, you're going to want to pack a lunch. But the skiff will just skim over the top. You're going over the top of the water instead of pushing through it, if that makes sense.
And I will say this with the Outlaw, I've paddled both the Outlaw and I've paddled the skiff. And to me, I like the paddleboard style. That's just one of the things that I really like. But what was surprising to me is I had been on a few boats before I'd been on the Outlaw. And to me, that was one of those things that if you're looking for stability, it's great.
Yeah.
If you're looking for maneuverability, it is not.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And the skiff to me was just a lot easier to maneuver and a lot easier to move.
Yeah.
That's both in the seated position and in the standing position. Whether I was paddling it like a paddleboard or whether I was sitting, and I cannot stress enough, that seat on the skiff is amazing. The Bonafide SS series seat is amazing. And so that's another thing that if you're looking at those two, sitting in one of those is going to be a real determiner as well.
Yeah. Zach, what's up, buddy? Hey, so just local news here. We're not going to be doing the demo days this year, but we always can do a demo for you. That's not a problem at all. We're just a lot of changes with staffing and all that. And, I said, we're kind of ready to hit it full speed, but with the different events we got going on, we've kind of decided not to do the demo days this year. But just know if you got a day and you want to go out and paddle it, man, just let me know. We'll take you out there. That's not a problem at all there.
This topic here tends to get us, I'm just going to warn you, a little hot. And I think the big reason why is we see a lot of people use outriggers and stabilizers on these cheaper kayaks. When we start getting into something other than the Pelicans and the Lifetimes and all of that, we start not seeing a need for it. Yeah.
And just hot may not be the best word, but and I'm not hating on the budget kayaks necessarily, but I'd never want to see somebody buy a kayak with the purpose of modifying it to make it do something that it wasn't designed to do. Outriggers are okay, but what happens is the drag that you get in the water with those, if you're having to paddle with them in the down position. And what I'm talking about mainly is a lot of people will use the buoy flotation devices and PVC piping just to kind of give you more stability. The two things that I see most people do is when they buy maybe a Pelican or a Lifetime, they want to do two things. They want to see if they can do a frame seat on it, and they want to do outriggers. And those are two things that, while you can do it, there's ways you can do it, or certain seats that may fit. It's not, you're putting pressure points on parts of the hull that aren't designed to take that. Same thing with the outriggers. It's more clutter on your kayak. And honestly, there are some really good budget-friendly kayaks that may do. Even Pelican makes makes almost looks like a little John boat. I always tell people, again, if you're needing to modify your kayak for more stability, there's probably another kayak in that same realm. Now, if you already own a kayak and you're trying to make some changes there, it can help, but just know that you may be affecting the performance of it a lot more than you're wanting to, again, paddle it around with.
So I'm just going to skip to this comment because having lived in Louisiana, which we won't talk about here. So Gators, the Gator thing, here's the thing about the Gator thing. They usually leave you alone unless you're doing something that attracts attention, in which case, if it's an injured fish or things like that, you might actually attract their attention. And I say this because...
Or they're nesting.
Yeah, or they're nesting. Stay away from nests. I will say that when I was in Texas taking classes, I had my hand inside of a lovely pond we were in, and there was literally gators all around us because we were taking measurements overnight as well. And we just saw the eyes, and they were more curious than anything. But injured fish, anything like that, is going to grab their attention. Same thing with sharks. The big thing we always said was, if you act like prey or you have prey, there's a bigger chance of something happening. And so it's just kind of being aware of that.
Yes. I kind of joked. So again, we sponsor two pretty good local groups here with gift cards and stuff for their kayak fishing tournaments. And I've kind of joked around that I was going to do a paddleboard kayak fishing on a tournament. So again, it's funny because I'm terrible on a paddleboard. So getting out there, get it out. Getting on a paddleboard, because let's be honest, we're in 2024 now. 10 years ago, a fishing kayak was a kayak with a fishing pole on it. That was it. Like, that was all you needed. And it's still technically all you need. And it's one thing I always tell people is, if you already know what you're doing, a good kayak, a good quality kayak is going to be great for you. If you're a novice or you're still figuring things out, the worst thing someone can do is buying a $4,000 or $5,000 kayak, expecting that kayak to do magic. Same thing with live scope. So it is definitely, yeah. And there, I believe one of the local tournaments, the Angler of the Year, doesn't use electronics. So
I'm going to point this out because I don't know that it'll ever happen again. We were in Hobie's, so I can't say that we were paddling, but I beat him this year.
Yeah, you did.
And he was running side scan.
Oh yeah, down scan, side scope, all that.
I don't use any of it. Yeah. I don't even know how to read
it. Video game fishing.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, you got. Now I caught the biggest fish of the year, but you caught more fish. Yeah. Little inside joke there.
Larry Hollis he's an excellent fisherman. We've dealt with him a few times. Yeah. Paddleboarding. This is where we need to insert the clip. And if you search his YouTube channel, you will see me falling off my paddleboard, running it in place because my dog Zoe was with me. You can actually see her feet back over there. She's laying on the ground. But yeah, she was the one that absolutely destroyed me last year because she didn't know if she wanted to stay with me or go to dad. And so she decided to go to dad and just knocked me off the whole thing. So,
and if you want to check that out, it's the, I did a video, it was the Ascend 133 compared to the Outlaw, the Perception Outlaw on the water. There's a lot of video of Zoe, which is the dog right here, getting in and out, because when we're both in our own kayak, she was on her paddleboard and I was on either one of the kayaks. We called her the fur torpedo because she swims really, really good. She swims better than she walks.
Yeah, she's the one that you'll probably see her walking around a little bit. She's got arthritis, so we put her in the water, and she's my water dog.
Yeah,
so.
But she's climbing up in both the kayaks. Well, she was standing on her paddleboard when she was messing around with it, saw me over there, and then you could see her kind of looking over, and you could see her flinching a little bit, and she took off running. Well, the paddleboard went back, and then she did like the little Looney Tunes running in place and then dunked in the water.
Yeah, it was
I got it on video. I got it on video. Those moments are gold.
He gets to make fun of me for that, but I get to make fun of him because he would never be able to stand on the paddleboard with her. So there's
that. got Larry chiming in.
Larry, it's great to have you on here. Dana, in terms of taking the dog with us, so here's the thing. I actually, before him and I met, she was my paddleboarding dog. I would take her everywhere. Once we got together, our first experience with her was on a kayak, and that's when we started seeing the fur torpedo is not knowing who to go with. And so she stays home more often than she comes with us.
This is a really good question. I just saw this. So sorry there, Dragon. So just news, big news. So here in Cotter, the shop we work for, we just signed up to be a Oldtown kayak dealer. And I've even asked Oldtown about this because there's a little confusion, and there's, and that's all we need with electronic on kayaks is more confusion. I've heard that you don't have to, because it's technically not a trolling motor. It's the same reason, the way it was explained to me, it's the same reason that if you have an it's a technology that's on electronic bicycles, the electronic assist on the pedals. Well, that's technically not a motorcycle because it's a motorized bicycle, but it's an assist. So I don't think you have to register it, but I see that being an issue in some parts where you get pulled over by a game warden or something, and he's asking where your stickers are because it's got cruise control on it. If you got the cruise control on, you're not doing anything. It's motoring you along. But that's a really good question. As of right now, I don't think you have to have that. But I think that's going to need to iron itself out. And don't be surprised if some states make adjustments. Not saying all of them will, but just, because there's some states you have to register all kayaks. So just know, depending on your state, how cool they are with that. We don't typically, that's not a kayak that we sell a tremendous amount of, but we can special order them, of course.
All right. Dragon, wrong one. Hold on. There it is. BMAC, you asked about the Hobie 180 drive reliability. I'm going to say something that'll him go with it. When he chose his PA 14, he actually went with the 180 drive over the 360, and I'll let you explain.
Yeah, and it wasn't for the reliability. I liked it because I felt like I had more room. The profile of the drive in the deck is a lot more low profile. It's not big and bulky and take up a lot of your room. And I fish open water. I get into some little coves and stuff, but I didn't really need 360 degrees of pedaling. That's the only reason I didn't go with it. But the 180 drive is phenomenal. They're easy to work on. I think I've rebuilt them before, and they're not incredibly expensive. Now, buying the entire drive is expensive, but the spine of it, I think it was like 150, 160 bucks retail. And that's pretty much the guts of it, as long as you got the fins and the pedals on there. So it's not bad at all. I think what happened with the 360 drive is the belt. So the belt in it, there's a belt that connects the clutch where your turn handle is, and there's a clutch that connects where the drive is. It turns the drive. The belt in between that, if that snaps, you have to get in there. You have to take all that apart. You have to replace it. And again, it's not as big of a deal now as it used to be because you can get the parts. The last 3 years, getting parts from Hobie, that was the more frustrating things. And Larry Hollis here can attest to that. We can contact Hobie. Hobie can say, yeah, we're going to do it. But sometimes getting some of those parts, it takes weeks. And in some cases, a few years ago, months. So and I think that's where, in my opinion, that's where Hobie got the deserved black eye that they got, is when you spend that much money, you kind of expect to get, hey, you need a part, that's fine, let's get it done. And when you say, I'm sitting there holding on to something at the shop and it's, a month passes by and they're asking, I was like, well, let me contact my rep. Let me find out. It's as frustrating to us as it is to anybody, but the parts from my experience has gotten a lot better. Not saying it'll never happen again, but getting the belt, again, the belt assembly, I think is $40, $50. I mean, it's not a huge pain. I do like the fact that on the new drives, all the 24s and moving forward is going to have that XR. It's a manual adjustment. So if your belt does break out there, you have some kind of malfunction, you can manually adjust and lock it in place so you're not pedaling it and then your drive is just spinning around and around and you're stuck out there. So
I want to go to Dawn's comment here, is running lights. This is something that you have to think about if you are motorizing your kayak. And there's something else to think about also in Arkansas is he's old enough where he didn't have to do the boater education. They have a rule, I think it's January 1st of 1986, that if you're born after that, you have to do boater education. Well, I happen to fall into that category by just a few months. And so I actually had to go get my boater education. So that was something I had to do. So that way, if something happened to him, I could take over and do his kayak stuff. But also that was part of the boater education, was needing the running lights. You need the white light behind you. And then you also need the green and the red.
Green and the red. And if you're in Arkansas, if you're paddle, you got to have white on the front, white on the back in low light situations. A lot of times the Yak Attack 360 LED flag light, that a lot of times will get you, keep you out of any kind of attention. But man, it attracts the bugs. I'll say that. Yep. I tell you what, I've got a video coming up where, now I did a video in the past on how to fix your kayak where I do plastic welding. That is specifically for rotomolded kayaks. I had a guy bring in an Oldtown. I say old, it's as old as me. It was a 97 model, which is what I am. Or no, I graduated in 97. I'm a 78 model. So what they did, and I see people on groups, and I know this is not specifically what you're asking, but I'm going to kind of go down a side path here, and I'm going to come back to the road here. They use a Lowe's bucket and melted it over it. And there's a lot of groups out there that people say, yeah, I use a milk jug or I use a Lowe's bucket, and that will get you out of a pinch. That's not good to fix it. And, that's not good for your fix moving forward. The melting point and the density is so much different between those two plastics. The reason I make that point is the plastic to melt or mold into that, it's so cheap and so readily available. You can go on Amazon and get plastic rods. You can get a plastic welding kit. It's like a little hot iron that you get rod stock in it and you just melt it on there and you're good to go. But again, what happened was this was just caked on there. It was just blue. And when I put a heat gun to it, it just washed away like water. And it was a big puncture about that big around. And somebody just globbed it in there and then covered it over. Well, what happened was the cracks started running. And then when I took all that off, you saw the real root problem there. We had a lady bring a boat in actually Saturday, and it was a milk jug, just clear plastic. And of course, just waving a heat gun, it just melts away. Again, it got her off the water, which is all you need to do. But, a lot of people talk about using zip ties or Lowe's buckets or just any plastic. There's reasons that that's not the best option. The density is a lot different. Now, to your question here, docks and structures, I've heard of people using Gorilla Tape. The only reason Gorilla Tape's kind of a pain in the butt is if it does scratch, it'll start to chip and it'll start to kind of run a little bit, and people just slap more of it on there. I'm not a big fan of having pieces of tape going all over the body of water you're in. Burley Pro sells some good products. We had a customer order one and ship it to the shop where it's a keel guard for both the front and the back for his Hobie. New Canoe, when I had New Canoe, that was something I was looking into because New Canoe does not have skid plates, that sacrificial skid plate on the back. So, and I beach mine up on the ramps all the time, so it would chew it up a little bit. As far as that though, honestly, there's so many things out there now. There's companies that sell kits. I know like the Hobie Links, there's stuff out there where you just with a heat gun and it's got the adhesive on it. And it's just like little armor plating. You don't want to go too heavy on that because that actually will affect the draft and the performance of your kayak. But yeah, as far as pool noodles, that's pretty extreme there. To me, that would make a good paddling kayak just atrocious, but it could protect that. But to me, you'd have the same problem. You'd have that thing just breaking into pieces and then going all over the place. I think so. Now granted that kayak has only been out really for just a little bit, but I took it out and that was a game changer. And you probably watched that video. I didn't have a whole lot of experience paddling with a foot controlled rudder, just being where we're at. It's just not something that's out there a lot. That is amazing. The only issue that I really had was pulling the cord on the side, the rudder going up and down. The angle of it in the back did make it a little bit rough, but it was on that one kayak, and the other kayaks, we kind of tried that out. You really didn't have an issue, and you can adjust the tension. There's a little plug in there where you can twist it, and it's a spring that you can kind of load up. So it makes it come down and up a lot harder. I love that kayak. To me, that's going to give the New Canoe Unlimited a run for its money this year. The New Canoe Unlimited is still $17.99 versus $18.99. But to me, the PWR 129 is a cross between the SS 127 and the RVR 119. But it's got a foot controlled rudder, and it's got hatch storage in the front, and it's got a high-low seat, and it's got all of this stuff, access plates, everything. I love the New Canoe. Don't get me wrong. The New Canoe Unlimited is great if you want that wide open deck space, but that power motorizing, that's kind of where it's at.
So we've got another question from Marion on the Outlaw and the skiff. So one thing about Bonafide that you have to be aware of is weight capacity includes the weight of the boat.
Well, what she means is, so if a weight capacity is listed as say 425, it's paddler plus gear plus the weight of the boat. And then Bonafide's kind of taken a little bit of heat for that, but they're upfront about it. So is Oldtown does the same thing. Perception, while they say they don't do that, Perception's one of those companies that I don't know how accurate. That's one thing that everyone does a different thing. There's some companies that do the point in which the boat sinks, which is not really accurate. The point in which the performance of the kayak is hindered, So in my opinion, weight capacities, I wouldn't get too hung up on weight capacities because if you're getting anywhere near that weight capacity, no matter where it's at, you're going to experience a substantial drop off in capacity. The boat's not going to sink down to the bottom of the water. You just may see some water coming up through the scupper holes. The skiff, again, I'm 270 pounds. I'm a big boy. So I had paddle, I had fishing gear, and I didn't feel like it was hindered in any way. Now, if you're looking at putting, if you're bigger than me, if you're carrying a lot more gear, or if you're looking to power it like a motor and some batteries and stuff, you may want to go a little bit more. I may not suggest doing a trolling motor on the skiff. If you're looking for a trolling motor, I would probably do the Outlaw between those two, but there are some options that you may even like a little bit better. With a trolling motor option, I might look at the Jackson Bite a little bit more. The Jackson Bite is pretty much the same width and length as the Outlaw. It does plane across the water a little bit better, and you do have a accessory plate that Jackson sells that makes a flat transom on it. It also gives you some options to maybe get a little bit more affordable trolling motor options, and you don't need those big, heavy, lunky setups that some of them run.
The other thing with the Bite is it's more maneuverable than that the Outlaw 11.5. In terms of trolling motor weight, those are going to be pretty consistent, but the battery, that varies depending on whether you are getting a lithium battery or just a regular lead acid.
Yeah. I ran a lead acid on my XI3 on the Unlimited. I think that thing was like 63 pounds. Now the lithiums, you can get them 30, 40 pounds, which is, it's considerably smaller and less weight. It's a little safer too, and it's a little better charging. But I threw a lead acid battery on there just to kind of give, just kind of give it a run. I wasn't looking at running it for too long there.
And the other thing we had to keep in mind with that one was when we were buying it was, are we keeping the XI3? How much do we want to spend on a battery? Do you want to spend this much if we're not keeping it? That was kind of the big thing we had to ask ourselves too.
And that's what put me in pedal drive kayak. I got the speed I got on my Pro Angler was similar to what the speed I got with the XI3, the trolling motor on my Unlimited. And I liked being able to control the boat a little bit more instead of just, again, playing video games on the boat was kind of what it felt like. And again, that's just personal preference. I love to paddle. I love to be on rivers. If I'm out there, I like to control the boat. I like to steer it. I like to, I like to fidget. So, but the Bixby sells some different options, and I believe it will. I don't have any personal experience on that, of course, but the XI3 and the Bixby, again, those are two separate motors, two separate classes. The Bixby makes a great product, and I believe we have a Bixby at one or two of our stores there. If I'm doing it on a PWR, I'm probably going to go XI3 just because it's a 55-pound thrust motor. It's going to, again, the power is not as heavy as a Titan X, but it's still heavy at about 85 pounds. So I would probably go with the XI3. The Bixby will run it, but the Bixby battery, the power source is not as substantial. And when you're pushing or pulling a heavier kayak like that, it's going to drain that battery pretty quick.
All right, guys, I think we have hit that hour mark. We're going to really be working this week to try to get our internet situation figured out. We appreciate all of you very much for coming out and really appreciate all the feedback, the comments. We actually really enjoy the comments a lot. We enjoy answering questions. It makes us not feel like we're sitting here talking and being boring.
But I'm open to the possibility.
Of course you are.
So again, we're in the future of the live stream. We're going to look at doing guests. I've already got a couple of people lined up. I'm looking forward to that. But again, we got to figure out this internet. We've had internet problems since we moved here. So a little surprised. Now this does drain quite a bit of that bandwidth doing live streams. So it may be a thing where we're shutting off the power to the house just to power the live stream here. But we pay for one thing, but we get another, and that's kind of our frustration with it. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for stopping in. Thank you so much for the feedback. Don't forget, again, this stays up on YouTube. So if you think of a question or something, put it in the comments. We'll see it later. And again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all of that good stuff. It helps the channel out, get to more people and more people like you. So thank you so much.
And if you guys have questions or want something specific for us to go over, just some kind of topic or something, just let him know. I let him handle all of it. I just come along for the ride. Again, we appreciate all of you hanging out with us tonight, and we will see you next Sunday.
See you, everybody. Thank you.